All right, so let me start with some administrative stuff to talk about, and then I'll answer questions both in person and on here. The first is, of course, we have this project coming due, which I've mentioned. I think you'll find it quite simple. It only gets a little bit hard if you do the extra credit. I'm certainly happy to take any specific questions you have on it, but I do want to point out what you have for all these projects when you go to submit it is this right, let me make it a little bit bigger, this right here to view rubric. So before you submit it, you're definitely going to want to click on that and go through it. Let's see, what's going to let me go through this? Yeah, I think I just need to shrink it down. Let me try that again. All right. So in this case, I'll just go through them very quickly. This is checking that your program compiles, program runs. Someone was nice enough to post on Piazza and say, hey, you should be taking a look at this stuff if you aren't, because, excuse me, you're expected to put a comment at the top of your program that has your name and the project number. So, should do that. This I haven't talked about, so let me talk about this. Your program code is formatted nicely with indenting inside of curly braces, etc. Let me take just a moment to talk about, indicate what I'm talking about there. Oh, let's see. All right, so this is uninteresting. The only reason I'm showing this to you now is note that everything's flushed against the left side. It's I did put some configuration stuff in Vim to help with indenting and so forth, but it's still possible to end up with code that either is partially or completely unindented. And indenting is, the C++, the language doesn't care. Okay, the language doesn't care whether you indent or not. It's simply for our benefit as humans to make it easier to read. And what this option is saying, program is formatted nicely with indenting inside of curly braces, etc. Vim can automatically format code at any time by typing gg equals g. Now obviously you do it in command mode, because if I'm in insert mode, you get that in your document, which clearly you don't want. So let me explain what the two lowercase g's are doing. That's actually a movement command in the editor. Regardless of where you are, if I type gg, it takes me to the top of the file. And its complement is an uppercase G, takes you to the bottom of the file. So I'm down here now. So GG up there, uppercase G down there. So that's what the GG and the G are. What remains is this equal sign. What is that doing? The equal sign is a command to do reformatting. What it's expecting is some sort of movement. So if I am here and I type equal, now it's waiting for me to, you'll see actually in the bottom right corner, you'll see an equal sign there, which indicates it's kind of pending the operation. So I've indicated I want to do some code reformatting. By formatting or reformatting, I just simply mean indenting. And it wants to let me know which lines. It's expecting some sort of movement. So if I hit J to go down, the assumption was that I wanted to reformat this line, and I hit a J, which J normally takes you down, so it would think that I wanted to reformat that line as well. Okay, so using that as information, if I say GG, it takes me to the top of the file. Now if I hit an equal sign, it's waiting for some sort of movement to indicate what it is I want to reformat. Well, if I do an uppercase G, which takes me to the bottom of the file, that means essentially that I want to reformat the entire file, right? So that's where this little recipe comes from. So now if I do an uppercase G, my entire program gets reformatted. Okay? So really this and the commenting, and you'll find of all the instructors in the computer science department, I'm probably the least anal about commenting. You'll have instructors that'll say you gotta, before every function, you have to put your inputs and your outputs and the name of the function and your maiden name and a little bit of history, right? They have all these requirements, and I'm kind of, well, if it helps you understand the program, then comment it. Otherwise, don't comment it. I am just forcing a little bit on here for you to put your name and project number at the top. Really, the reason I'm doing that is I want to get you used to what a comment is, just like what a variable is and what the main function is. So I just want you to practice with commenting. So that's my motivation for that. Formatting, I just want you to take your medicine and come to discover that actually these programs, as they do get more and more complex, are quite a bit easier to read when they're indented properly. Okay, yes?
For the comments, is that for projects or is that for like every lab and assignment we do as well?
Every lab and assignment.
Like why
okay, so the grading in general, I'm fairly loosey-goosey about grading of assignments. Labs are automatically graded, so if that automated turn-in tool isn't complaining, then there's nothing wrong. And projects, you should always refer to the grading rubric. If it's there, do it. If it's not, don't worry about it. And it is, and as we get forward into later, it might be on the second project, but I think subsequent projects, I don't have that. So that's what formatting is. There's a need to, and then the rest end up being content for the project, that it generates a random number, that you prompt for the player, right? Things to just grade on. So any questions on that? Yes?
So I've already turned this in, and I had it output like it told the player when they lose what the number was. Is that okay?
That is okay. And as a general proposition, if you turn in a project or assignment, regardless of whether it's turn in or on Blackboard, I've got unlimited submissions enabled.
Well, yeah.
And so just to say it, since not everyone's familiar, you can, until this link disappears for submitting, you can go ahead and submit as many times as you like. When your project or assignment or whatever it is downloaded to be graded, only the most recently submitted version is obtained. All the others are just ignored. Okay, so definitely take advantage of that. All right, any questions on that? Okay, the next is, I made mention of it before, I want to make mention of it again. On the Monday-Tuesday lab will be what I'm calling an exam. Let me elaborate a little bit on that. It is going to be 13 programs. You're not expected to complete 13 programs. 13 programs that have a problem. Many of them just have a syntax error, which means if you try to compile them, they won't succeed because of something like a missing semicolon. Maybe those chevrons on the CN statement are going the wrong direction. Things like that. And then towards the end, there are some programs that have logic errors where like an if-else statement is used incorrectly. They're really, really simple. None of them are more than 10 lines. Most of them are 3 to 5 lines. So there is a logistical comfort that you need to have. You need to be able to open up these programs in an editor. You need to be able to compile. You need to be able to make edits, obviously, to the programs and do that workflow, right? And you need to be able to do it repeatedly because there are several programs. My motivation, and this is being done in all of the 111 lab sections. The motivation for doing this is it's not intended to be a high-stakes exam where your grade is going to make or break on it. In fact, I don't even. Maybe the thing's going to be graded as a lab. I haven't even thought about how much it would be worth yet. But it's meant to be low stakes. The motivation for doing it is 111 is a bottleneck course. Historically, it is 25 to 35% of the people in this room are either going to drop out, are either going to withdraw, or they're going to get a D, or they're going to get an F. Okay, and we are, as instructors of 111, are trying many different things to try and reduce that so that more of you are succeeding. So the reason for the timing is the Friday of week 4 is census, which means up to week 4, up through the end of week 4, you can go ahead and drop the course and nobody cares. Okay? After that, then it becomes almost impossible to drop because you need to get the chair or the department to sign off on it and the dean of the college to sign off on it and all that. So this is our last chance, for you to get a real good feel for whether you want to be in here, because if you feel like you're out of your element and you're not going to pass, get out of here before the end of week 4. 2, what we're going to be doing as instructors is taking those who are struggling the most, and we're going to get face-to-face with you prior to the end of week 4. So you may receive, after the Tuesday exam for the Tuesday-Thursday group, then the lowest performers, I'm going to be sending out emails saying, hey, before Friday, you got to get in front of me, either in office hours, or if my office hours don't work for you, you name a time, and I will be there. And we need to talk about what we can do to either, 1, get you out, decide whether the course isn't for you, or 2, what we can do to step it up to help you succeed. Okay, that's the purpose of this thing coming. So don't freak out if you do poorly on it. If you do poorly on it, then be proactive and come see me, and I want to help you succeed. All right, so that's the deal with that. I don't know what else to say about that, but anyway, that's coming down the pipe. Any questions on that? Okay, so any questions about anything at all? I know that I have questions here, and I'll be happy to answer those momentarily. Yes?
I noticed on like the turn-in page versus some of the stuff that's doing just on Blackboard, like assignment number 5 is like different on each one, something like that. I was looking at it last night.
On the lab turn-in?
Let me open it real quick.
All right. Is that what you're referring to as a lab?
I think so. There's like the turn-in, like, thing that like checks your code when you turn it in.
Yeah,
the Blackboard. Are those different?
You're talking about this kind of stuff?
Yeah.
You said 5 was different?
I think so.
Yeah, you'll need to show me the specifics to look at it. All right, so let me ask if now's a good time. You are starting to work in Vim quite a bit, and as a general proposition, if it's taking you more than, say, 3 keystrokes to do some sort of edit, then you can do it more efficiently than you're doing it. Is there anything that you want to know how to do in Vim right now? And I'll ask this periodically throughout the semester. Yes?
I know with W you can like skip forward word by word. Is there any way you can go backward word by word?
So in fact, I'll even add a bit more information. Lowercase w takes me forward what's referred to as a small word. A small word is delineated by either white space or the transition between non-alphanumerics and numerics. So for instance, let me rephrase that slightly. The transition between punctuation and letters and numbers. So you'll notice here a lowercase w takes me to there, and then note that there's no more white space, but I transition to punctuation here, and then I transition back here, and then I transition here and here and here. So that's the lowercase w moving forward. The uppercase W is what is referred to as a large word, and that means the only thing delineating words are white space. So here it would be an uppercase W takes me to the I here, and then another uppercase W takes me all the way to the next word in the document. Let me, as I answer your question, so W, move forward a small word. W, move forward a large word. B, backwards. Oops. So that would be B. Any other questions? Yeah.
Is there any way to essentially cut, delete multiple lines and paste them later, not just one at a time?
Yeah, there are multiple ways of doing it. Let me give you a real straightforward way of doing it. You can say colon number comma number yank colon number comma number delete. This is yank line range. This is delete line range, and then P, of course, is put contents of unnamed, I'll call it unnamed buffer. So I can say colon 8 comma 10 yank. You'll notice there at the bottom of the screen. And also, incidentally, I have that CTOD type going, so feel free to have this window open on your computer or phone rather than looking up at the screen constantly. And now it says 3 lines yanked at the bottom, so now I can go to a different part of the document and type P for put, and it inserts them. And then the same would work for D, and that would be the equivalent of cut.
All right, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Like between documents, or is there like a bin, clipboard?
To go between documents?
Yeah.
Yes, so there are let me give the other version of this. Number YY would be yank number lines, and then that would be delete number lines. That puts it into what's referred to as the unnamed buffer, which would be the equivalent of the clipboard. To edit another file is :E file name. So I can say, let me actually come here and quit out of this. I can say :E vim tips. In fact, I can hit tab and it'll complete it for me. And I get a complaint. It says that I've got changes I haven't written out to this file, so it's not letting me go. So I have a couple options. I can say :E exclamation point. That is basically going to abort and not write out my changes and edit the other file. Or I can simply write out my changes first before I go over. So I say :W to write, writes out the changes. Now I say :E vim tips, brings that up, and now I can use P for put, and it puts whatever I had either pasted or cut previously. The other thing is it's common to go back and forth. There's a shortcut rather than me actually typing out the name of the file, which would be some code to go back to where I was previously. There's a shortcut which is the pound key, which is to edit the file I was just editing. And now it becomes a toggle. So I say :E pound, I go back here, :E pound, I go back here, and so I can go back and forth between two files quickly, which is very convenient. 3YY, :E pound, paste it in here, do some more, write out the changes, :E pound, maybe grab this line, YY, :E pound, lets me put it right here, So that makes it quick to go back and forth between two files and share information. Yeah.
I'm still kind of confused how the YY works.
YY means yank a line.
So how do you select the lines you're yanking for the?
So by default, YY is going to yank the line I'm on. I don't have to be at the beginning of the line. I can be anywhere. If I'm here, I say YY. Now I go to the bottom of my file and I say P, and it puts a copy of it. The number is optional, so I can say 3YY. That's yanking lines 2 through 4. And if you want to specify, again, it's real easy just to specify number range if you don't want to do it that way. There is a thing you can do, which is V means highlight line. And then, so what I can do is I can do an uppercase V, and that highlights this line. Now I can use J to go down or K to go up. And when I have the lines that I'm happy with that I want to yank or cut, I can either hit D to delete them, or I can hit Y to yank them. And so that's another way.
And is there like so let's say you kind of do something and you like delete it immediately? Is there like an undo or
There is an undo. It's U is undo. It only persists as long as you're in this file, but it is recursive. I don't know if you'd call it recursive. It will unwind all the way to the beginning of when you first open the file.
where you can't do it over and over again if you really want to?
I can't. So if I do, so let me do U. Yeah, but so here I'm already at oldest change. So this was the point of time where I had switched back from the other file. So it's only as long as you're in that session. And then to redo is Control R, so I can just hold down Control R and it gets me back to here. Anything else? When I had this open, let's see. Oh, colon. So for the first time you added another file, you say colon E and you give the name of the file. After I have done that first switch, then I can always go back to the most recently, the file I was just editing with the pound sign. And that, so subcode is what I had just been editing. If I do colon E pound, Vim tips is what I had just been editing, so it takes me back there. So it just becomes a convenience for me to toggle back and forth between two files, which is actually not that uncommon, right? You want to grab some lines and paste them, and then you go back. Yeah?
Does that file already have to exist, or can you just use state?
No, it doesn't. So I can say colon E new file .cpp, and now I'm here. And then I can write out the changes and then go back to my previous file, which is now this one, and then colon E pound takes me back there. Yeah.
If you make a file like that, well, put it in the same directory that you're working with.
By default, everything assumes the current directory unless you say otherwise. Yeah. Yes?
Yeah, if you're going to do colon E with something that's not in that directory, do you have to, like, how can you do that with the path name?
So let me quit out for a moment. Let me make a directory called lab03. Let me copy some code.cpp into lab03. Right, so I have lab03. Let me make a directory called lab04. And let me copy, I don't know, new file.cpp into lab04. All right, so I've got two directories. One's lab03, one's lab04. If I look at lab03, I've got some code.cpp. If I look at lab04, I've got new file.cpp. Let me actually change into lab04, and I vim new file.cpp. Now I want to edit the file in lab3. It becomes the same as that assignment that we did on Monday. So I say colon E up in the parent directory. I want to go into lab04. And I want to edit new file.cpp. And whoops, that's where I am now. Excuse me, I just edited myself. I'm sorry. Which I'm lab03. And there it is. Now I can go back and forth if I want. Any other questions? All right, so keep cranking away with them. In another week or two, I'll ask the same question and hopefully can give you some additional things to make your editing faster. Also, if I do anything in class, don't feel shy about shouting out and say, "What did you do just then?" And I'll be happy to tell you. All right, so let's see. I don't need that. Actually, don't need that. Got the Vim tips. And now let me get to these questions here. Why does it say we should have turned in a project proposal by the 6th of this? Where does it say that?
On the turn-in page.
On turn-in?
Yeah. For that.
For labs? This thing?
Yeah.
Where does it say that? I have a slightly different page because I've got this kind of instructor view.
I don't see it.
Now, there's a very slim chance. I generally don't have this problem now because you all are in section 1 of 111, which is where we're sitting right now. But it is possible to misenroll into someone else's 111 section. The thing to look at, let me bring this up. Okay, this is what you should be seeing. 111.1, that's my section. If you don't have 111.1 here, then you've been faithfully completing someone else's labs. If you don't have 111.1, see me outside of class and we'll get you squared away and caught up. But otherwise, let me know if that continues to be a thing. I don't have the slightest idea what that means. Is there ever a situation where you should use getLine over cn sum var? Yes. Oh boy, running short of time already. If I create a string name and then I say cn name and then I say your name is and then I print out name. Put this on a different line so it looks prettier. Let me come over here, leave that up so we can look at it. And I say G++ standard equals C++, whatever I'm saying for people to use there. What's the name of this program? Code. And I'm going to let it be called a.out. I'm not going to give it a fancy name. There it is, a.out. Let me run it. Immediately I get the prompt, don't be thrown. I did not say, please enter your name. It just went straight to line 8, which is to ask for it. So I'm going to type Todd Gibson. It only says Todd. So the limitation of using the chevrons for input, in particular for strings, is that it will cease grabbing the input the moment it sees white space. So that space after the D in Todd was where it stopped processing input. Now it's still there. I can actually do another cn statement. Cn, I'll use the same variable. It doesn't matter whether you use the same variable or not. Let me do that. Let me compile. Let me run that. So what happens is it's still sitting there to be read in, but it takes a totally different statement to do it, and it will stop as soon as it sees white space. Okay. If you want to include white space, if you want to include everything up to and including the point where the person hits enter, then I'd use getLine instead. So I would go ahead and comment this out. I'll comment that out. And instead I would say getLine like that. And as the name of the function implies, it'll grab the entire line. More, it's just obviously printing out the same input that I received on line 9. So that's what you'd use getLine for. Yeah.
So could I have it for, say, you want to, say you had it print, please enter your name and have the dot dot, you have them enter it on that same line?
So here, if I had a prompt, you mean?
Yeah, instead of it like that.
Please enter name with a, you mean like this?
Yeah, could they enter their name after that? Like, how would you write that?
So it depends on what you do for output. So what people are instinctually going to do is put an end line here. And if I do that, let me compile it and run it. So we have it on the input is waiting on the next line. You would like it after the colon, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, so what's happening is you're printing out please enter name and then a space. And then this ENDL is printing a new line, so that's why the cursor's down here. All you have to do is omit that ENDL. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Oh, no, I've done it. There we go. All right, let me come back here. Let me get rid of the ENDL. Now let me recompile and run it. And now it's on the prompt is on the same line because I never did provide a new line.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
One more quick thing.
Sure.
So yesterday when we were doing typing in your name or left, right, and straight, and if I mistyped and I put backspace, instead of just going back, it was giving me like a box with a question mark in it.
Right, and so let me run it. I don't think we're going to see that problem here. The short answer is that is not a function of C++. That is a function of the properties of the terminal you're using. Okay, and what you'd have to do is find terminal settings and change the character that is being used for the backspace key.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting back and
You're getting a bunch of crap in there. Yeah, that's what's happening. Anything else? All right. So that's the answer to that. Can you get 100% on the project without extra credit? Yes, absolutely. You get more than 50 if you do the extra credit. That's why it's extra credit, right? You get full credit if you just do the basics. All right. Congratulations. You're laughing your ass off quite silently because I didn't hear it. But I understand you're probably just testing to make sure that it worked, and we're all on board. I heard I went to Chico. Is that true? I graduated from high school in 1984. So if you're familiar with Stranger Things, the older kid, is it Steve? I'm his age. Okay, so yeah, Stranger Things has a real nostalgic vibe for me. It's weird. Like the mall, I can't tell you how many hours I spent in Walden books. They did a really good job of creating the 80s in that show. Except I didn't have the monster thing, but I did have the video arcades. At the beginning of season 2, they're playing the kind of cartoon-looking dragon thing where the dragon. That's a real game. It's called Dragon's Lair, and I pumped probably at least $100 worth of quarters into that thing. And yes, I did go to Chico. I got my undergraduate degree. Yeah, there's more to tell, and I'll tell more the day that we take the final exam. But I will say I understand your pain, your struggles with school and stuff. I started as a computer engineering major, and frankly, I didn't like school, and I didn't want to do the math, all the calculus. So I actually changed majors to music, and I got a music degree here. But then a dozen years later, when I went back to graduate school, I then had to take all the math, so I didn't escape it ultimately. This one I think is probably answered now, but just to say it, I don't have Windows, but you have that little Windows search thing here. you've already got PowerShell running. You just come down here, type power, the PowerShell comes up in the search, you hit it, and a second PowerShell window opens up. So that's all there is to that. All right. Okay. Now the quickest presentation. I've got to get through loops right now, and I have to do switch statement. I'm definitely not going to have time for the switch statement. I do have a 7-minute video that I will provide a link to, and I know one of the labs is a switch statement, so I'm going to ask you to watch that 7-minute video to get the overview of switch. I will have that posted after class. Also, a little bit of an announcement. Unfortunately, I have something I need to attend to right after class today. So I will not be in today's lab, but I'll be in there long enough to tell our 2 lab assistants to hold down the fort. And of course, today is just the general, working on labs, working on the project, and hopefully the lab folks will be able to help you out. Also, I've had people tell me that when you're screwed up with Vagrant or something like that and can't figure something out, some lab person or one of the tutors or something says, no, what you need is you need this other piece of software. Don't let them install more software on your computer. You got everything you need. The reason they're saying that is they don't understand how to make it work. And that's not on them. That's on me because this is new. I'm introducing it. They haven't been exposed to it. It's reasonable that they don't understand what needs to be done. Just be aggressive about seeing me. I do have office hours today. I'll get you squared away with any kind of problems you have. All right? Okay, loops. There are 3 kinds of loops. Every loop is going to have some sort of initialization of some variable. I'm just going to say variable. Every loop is going to have a change. It's going to have a check of the state of the variable, and I'm going to show examples. And every loop is going to have a change of the state of the variable. Now there are exceptions to everything in edge quarter cases, but by and large the kind of meat and potatoes of loops has these 3 elements. Why would you use a loop? To do something repeatedly. So let me initialize a variable. I'm actually going to create, I'll call it counter, call it whatever you want, doesn't matter. Doesn't even have to be an integer necessarily, depending on what you're doing. So counter equals 0. Let me say :7y. P to put. I'll just put that comment right there. There's initialization of variable. The first loop I want to talk about is a while loop. The structure looks like this. And this is the initialization of the variable. Actually, let me see. Let me do that. And now what I want to do is I need to check the state of the variable. So I want to keep doing my loop as long as the counter is less than 4. And as long as the counter is less than 4, I want to print, I don't know what to print, happy, happy, joy, joy. And then I'll also print out, I'm going to print out what is in counter currently, just so we can take a look. Now I need to change the state of the variable, which means that in this case I'm going to add 1 to the variable. Programming languages historically to change, add 1 to a variable would say something like that variable is equal to whatever is currently in that variable plus 1. And that's perfectly legal in C++ too, right? So if counter currently contains 2, then 2 plus 1 is going to be 3, then it would be 3 assigned to counter. Yes? There are other variants. Counter plus equals 1. That works. And then you don't want to do all these. Counter plus plus. And now we know why the name of the language is such that it is. C++ is a language built on top of C. Language creators being the nerds they are. Plus plus means 1 more. So C++ is like 1 more than C, whatever that means. But that's why it's called C++, because of this particular thing. Of the three, you're almost never going to see this. This kind of thing you'll see more often, although plus equals ends up usually being for numbers more than once. For instance, if I wanted to add 23 to counter, I'd do plus equals 23. In this case, we just want to add 1 to counter, so I'm going to use this. Also, there's a very subtle difference between these two. They are the same. I actually prefer this version, so I'm going to put that version in. Either one will be fine, though. All right. Yes? Due to time, ask me again on this thing, and I will be sure to answer it next time. I'm just short of time, so I'm going to table it. It's a subtle difference, but I'm happy to talk about it. Yes? Minus minus is decrement 1. Yes, absolutely. I keep getting denied the tarball. Why is that? I don't know. The tarball for what? For the assignment? You'll see me offline, and I'll help you out with that. I don't know why you'd be having access problems. All right. Let's go ahead. I'm going to put this on 2 lines. I think let me compile it. Let me find a G++ line and just change it. What is this? Loops. And it loops 4 times. What value on line 20? What value does counter have? Yeah, that's 4. So you see it printing out there just before the prompt, right? Because what happens is we add 1 to counter. The final time we add 1 to counter is 4 less than 4. No, that's false. So at that point, it breaks out of the loop and jumps to the after the end of the loop, and it does line 20. So counter it's equal to 4 at that point. Okay. So that's the basic structure of a loop. This would be the let me abbreviate. This would be check state, and this one would be change state. So those are the 3 elements in the loop. If you're missing one of them, it isn't going to work. A close relative to the while loop is the do while loop, and its structure looks like this. So I need to initialize the counter. I'll say counter equals 0. This is the initialization. Initialization. Let me bring this up higher so we can see it. This one is the check state. And then I'm going to actually grab the exact same body. So lines 16 through 18, I'm going to yank that, and I'm going to put it right inside my do while loop. Now when I run it, we're not going to see any difference. So let me compile it and run it. We can see we get the exact same output for the first loop and the second loop. There is only one difference between the loops. Let me do an initialization, not to 0, but to 99. And ask the question, is 99 less than 4? No. And the same thing here, is 99 less than 4? No. But let's see what happens. The first loop never executes at all. So we hit line 14, is 99 less than 4? No, so it immediately jumps to line 20 and prints out that 99. However, the way the do while is structured, the check doesn't occur until after you've gone through the loop body at least one time. So that's what we're seeing with the happy, happy, joy, joy 99 is we do the loop one time and then the check comes. Is 99 less than 4? No, so we don't do the loop anymore. So that's the only difference between while and do while. The only time you would use do while is if you had the situation where you had to do the loop at least one time. And I'll give you an example of where you would want to do the loop at least one time. You ask a question, would you like to play again? Yes or no? And if they do not type yes or they do not type no, you want to ask the question again, right? Do you want to play again, yes or no? You type maybe, so it asks again, do you want to play again, yes or no? You want to ask that question at least one time. And you want to stop asking once they answer yes or no. So there's an example where you want the check after the body of the loop to make sure it happens at least one time. And then if they answer no, then the loop ends and you fall out. So that's 2 of the 3 loops. The last loop is called a for loop. The for loop is the most difficult to understand and is the most favored by fluent programmers because, and let me just actually do it. Let me change my 99s back to 4. Excuse me, not back to 4, back to 0. Counter equals 0. Counter is less than 4. Plus one's counter. And now I have my loop, so I'm going to take lines 24 through 26 and yank them. I'll put them right there. All right, here's my for loop. Note that the difference is the initialization, the check, and the increment, or the change in state, all happen on the same line. So the reason this is favored by fluent programmers is that sometimes these loops, these while loops and do while loops, could be something like 300 lines long, and maybe this line here is the change of state is on like the 153rd line of 300 lines. Well, as a programmer, it takes a little bit of time for me to figure out what the loop is doing exactly and when it's going to loop and when it's going to stop. And here, all the information is in one place, and it's very easy for me to quickly see what the loop does. Okay? But it's hardest to understand because it doesn't flow nicely from top to bottom. But this is functionally like a while loop. So let me first compile. Let me clear the screen. Let me run it. I'm going to print out this line 20. I'll print out here just so that we get it divided up there. Let me clear. I'm only getting 2. What am I doing? Oh, all right. So the for loop only printed 2 times and not 4 times. And in fact, the second time it says 2, not 1. Anyone want to help me debug this? Why it's doing that? Yes. Right. So let me describe what this loop is doing. Before the loop ever begins, it does this, and it'll never do it again. Only before the loop ever begins. Before the loop body is entered, it does this check. So it's exactly like a while loop. It's not like a do while loop. It's like a while loop. It'll check to see that it's less than 4 before it hops into the body. After it finishes with the body, then it adds 1 to counter. So it does this, does the check, prints happy, happy, joy, joy, counter is 0. Now it adds 1 to counter. Counter is equal to 1. We are done with the body of the loop. Since we're done with the body of the loop, it's going to do this, which is add another 1 to counter. Falls in, happy, happy, joy, joy, counter is 2, increases counter to 3. We're done with the loop, so now it does the increment. Counter is now equal to 4. Is 4 less than 4? No, so it drops out of the loop. That's why we only have 2 of these. So this is my bug. Basically, if I take the change of state out, and that's the way my for loop should look. And now I get the expected behavior. Okay. So that is a very, very quick introduction to loops. I'll post this along with the video to refresh. I will right now as well, I will post a little 7-minute video on switch statements. So take that in, see how switches work. And we will see you in, I won't be in Wednesday lab, see you Thursday lab and on Friday.